What is up, everybody? So it has been some time since I've made a video covering actually anything at all, but certainly made a video covering the 240 back here. It has been some time. So I want to update everybody who is subscribed to the channel and anybody watching on what's going on with the car. And yep, got something really cool happening there with the car finally after kind of a long period of nothing happening with the car. I think it's time to jump back into it and get some momentum going. So let's update you on what has been happening. Let me turn the camera around here. Okay, so probably on the last video, honestly I forget what the last video even was. It was probably me at the drag strip or something. It was probably me on the turbo. I probably upgraded the turbo last. So this turbo now is the VS Racing G42. Super cool turbo. So far I love it. It spools every bit as fast as my old 7875 Gen 1 billet turbo, but the back pressure on this guy is way lower, like super low, so low that it's really impressive. I wish I had the numbers in front of me. Maybe I'll think of it and put it in the video here, but back pressure is really looking good, and response on the turbo is super good, so that's a double win right there. So I think that turbo is definitely staying on the car and will hopefully be the last turbo that I even run on this car. And I want to rebuild the exhaust and get all this going back down again so that I can put a hood on the car. That's not going to happen right now or anytime super quick, but that's just kind of the long-term plan, just so you know what I'm thinking on that. But so after I did the turbo upgrade, I ran it on the street and tuned it a bunch and ran it up around 20 psi, and the car was absolutely faster than it's ever been. I mean, legitimately bonkers fast. Like, I have no frame of reference because I haven't been anything very fast. This is the fastest car I've ever been in or owned, but with that turbo at 20 psi, it was crazy. So crazy that it broke my transmission. So yeah, it actually exploded the drum, I think it's called, in the 4L80E. I was shifting this car at around 7,000 RPM or 7,200 or so, something like that. And hang on one second. Okay, so anyway, I was shifting the car at about 7,000 RPM approximately, maybe upwards of around 7,200, which I thought was safe on this transmission to do. For some reason, I thought that was okay. It was not okay. Turns out on a 4L80E, on the, what is it, on the 1 to 2 shift, the drum inside there is spinning double engine RPM. So at 7,000 RPM, the drum inside there is spinning 14,000 RPM. But then to perform the 1 to 2 shift, that drum has to come to a complete dead stop from 14,000 RPM to 0 RPM. And then the 1-2 shift happens, and then it accelerates again. And then on the 2-3 shift, for some reason, due to the way they're built, that doesn't happen, and it's not a problem. So I was spinning that drum at 14, nearly 15,000 RPM, and it has to come to a dead stop to make the shift, and then that shattered that drum or broke it or whatever. So anyway, the car just started flashing on the 1 to 2 shift all the way to red line. It would just hit the rev limiter on the shift, and then it would perform the shift, and then it would continue on, and it drove just fine. But other than that, it drove fine. But anyway, so I took the trans out and took it back to my trans guy, which is Dave at Express Auto Transmissions in Galena, Kansas. Which, interesting side note, if you want to follow a cool TikTok channel, Dave has a TikTok account that gets a ton of views. Guy's got like 120,000 subs, and multiple of his videos have over 1 million views. I just stumbled across it the other day, and I was like, hey, that's Dave, that's my guy. And then I realized his channel kind of blew up, and he's got videos of him tearing down transmissions. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, it's Dave at Express Auto Transmissions on TikTok if you want to see what he's up to. But he does all my trans work. So I pulled the trans out, took it to him. He discovered the drum was broke. We talked about what to do. He said, you really need an upgraded drum, an aluminum drum, if you want to keep shifting this thing at high RPM. And I said, you know what? I put enough money in this. I don't really want to drag race it a whole lot anymore. And I don't really want to spend much more money on this transmission. I'm not real happy with the way the car is right now, although it shifted great and drove great. I want to do something different. So just put a stock drum back in it, button it up, freshen it up, make sure everything's good, and I'll come and pick it up. So that's what we did, and when I got it back from him, I decided, you know what, I don't really even want to put this transmission back in this car. I want to sell this transmission, the torque converter and the shifter, and I want to put some other transmission in this car. So while the trans is out, I decided just to leave it out and put it up for sale. So it's up on Marketplace right now. Here's the transmission right here. If anybody's interested in it, it is in perfect condition, just refreshed by Dave, and it's all good to go. And it's got a Jake's D3 trans brake in it, as you guys probably know from the channel. It's literally ready to bolt back in. Right here on the ground is the PTC torque converter, which is phenomenal. I love that thing. And it works great. And then in the car is the TCI Dominator shifter. So if anybody's interested, I could sell you the whole setup, or I could sell you just the trans. I've got that trans priced at just $2,800, which I think is too cheap. I certainly have more than that in it, but anyway, $2,800 for that. It'll be more for that, and it'll be more for the shifter, but if somebody's truly interested, I'll make you a package deal. So that takes me to what the heck's going in the car. And I really thought long and hard about this. And for a while, I was like, man, I'm going to put a manual in that car. The car would be fun with a manual transmission. So I looked at all the options for manual transmissions. And basically what it comes down to is if you're making any big torque, like I'm going to say 600 pounds of torque or more, which I am for sure, you're going to put, like, you can try other transmissions, you can try other manuals, but you're just going to break them. It's going to happen. And basically the only transmission that everybody says you're not going to break is a T56 Magnum, not a T56 from a Camaro or something. They're really no good either. You need a T56 Magnum, which is the brand new T56 that they sell. You can buy them through Summit and other places. And they're rated right out of the box to handle 700 pounds of torque. And people tell me they'll take way more torque than that, but they're rated for 700, which is impressive. To be able to sell that transmission with a rating of 700 pounds means they've tested it at 700 pounds for a long period of time, and it can truly handle it. So I was pretty hot on the T56 Magnum, and it's still a possibility. To do that transmission, you need obviously all the things you can imagine. You need a flywheel, you need a clutch. Now your clutch is probably going to need to be a twin disc to handle that much torque, so you got some money there. You need a bell housing, you need the trans itself, you need all the hydraulics. In my case, would need a clutch pedal since this car was automatic from day one. I would need to rebuild a trans cross member and have the drive shaft modified for the output flange. So there's a lot of stuff that I would need to do, and a lot of parts for any transmission that I put in it. It's going to take a similar type of amount of work and amount of parts. T56 Magnum setup was going to run nearly $4,800 for all that stuff, buying it all brand new, which you're pretty much going to have to buy it all brand new, because there are no T56 Magnums out there used, just laying around that people are selling cheap. You might find one, but you can't just go find one today. You might stumble across one, but more than likely you're going to buy that new. So anyway, that's one option for the T56 Magnum. And I was pretty set on that for quite a while, for several weeks. I've just been mulling this problem over, and I thought, well, until this transmission sells, wherever it is, I will just consider my options, and I'll not buy anything, and I'll just look into options and think about transmissions and what do I want in there and what would be most fun. So I've given myself many weeks here to just mull it over and think about it. And I've taken that time to work on the house and do other stuff and just not do car things. So that's why the car's been down for so long, and that's why there's been no videos, because I've not been doing anything. Literally, the car's just been sitting around. But there's another transmission on the scene, and that's what I want to talk about right now. Okay, so the next transmission that I want to talk about, I've been really excited about for quite some time, ever since I learned about it. 6 or 8 months ago, I first started to hear about this transmission, and I did a big deep dive on the internet trying to learn about it and figure out what all the features were. And what I learned was that it's pretty much magic. It's like an incredible transmission that will blow your mind. When you consider everything it can do and how well it does it and how much it costs and its availability, etc., I think you will agree with me if you look at the whole picture that it's pretty much an unbelievable combination of features and price. It's a pretty cool deal. So anyway, you're like, what transmission are you talking about? Just tell me. So it's the 8 HP transmission. It's made by ZF, and they make a bunch of different variants, but the 8 HP 70 is the one that's the one that I'm looking at the most. They also have an 8 HP 90, which is in the Hellcat, and a few other big horsepower cars. So you know it's a strong transmission if it comes in the Hellcat. But that's the 8HP90. The one I'm looking at is the 8HP70, and it comes in like so many cars. Like you would not believe how many makes and models actually use the 8HP transmission. Excuse me. Dodge uses it in the Dodge Ram pickup. Jeep uses it in some of their, I think, Cherokees or whatever they sell these days. BMW uses it. Jaguar uses it. Bentley uses it. It's one of the most common automatic transmissions used currently right now. And it's used across a ton of different makes and a ton of different models. Your salvage yard, local to you, absolutely has one. Guarantee it. I don't care what kind of salvage yard you got. You probably got one of those transmissions laying out there available to you right now. So availability is super, super good. They're easy to get a hold of. They're very, very cheap. I got a quote on one this morning. In fact, about 30 minutes ago, I got a quote from my local trans shop for one with 32,000 miles out of a Dodge Challenger. 32,000 miles out of a Dodge Challenger, $700 out the door. So that is affordable. They can handle a ton of power. We have a lot of guys talking nowadays that they can handle like 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 pounds of torque with upgraded line pressure. And that's a stock transmission, not rebuilt, not upgraded clutches, nothing. And it's stock torque converter. Guys are running the stock torque converter. No need to upgrade the converter in most situations. So it's kind of like the 4L80E in that you can just get one out of a junkyard, and if it's in good shape, it can handle big power, except this can handle way bigger power than even the 4L80 can handle. Some of the other advantages is that it's way lighter than the 4L80. I don't know the exact numbers on a 4L80, but the 8HP70 is 175 pounds. And I can tell you that's lighter than a 4L80. So it's lighter. What else? Super compact, very small physically, very short. So I think it'll fit in my chassis with no mods. What else? So we covered price, we covered availability, we covered power. Oh, they're an 8-speed transmission. So right off the bat, instead of a 4-speed, we're talking 8-speed. So you got literally twice as many gears. And the reason that's important, I don't particularly like having a lot of gears for any other reason other than when you do have a lot of gears, you can, and this is the point of having a lot of gears, is so that you can keep your engine right in the operating range that you want it at. And that can be good for fuel economy if that's your thing, but it can be really good for acceleration, which is our thing. So, you know, whenever you have like a 4L80 or a 3-speed auto, you always want a looser converter. You want one that's super loose in the end if you're making a lot of power, because you want it to flash up to the upper RPM ranges, say 5,000 to 6,000 RPM. You want it to get up there as quick as possible. And then on the shift, you want it to stay up there. You want it to go wah, wah, wah. You want it to stay in the top. And with a 3-speed or a 4-speed old school trans like I've got back here, you have to have a super loose converter for it to stay up in the top end. But if you have twice as many gears, if you've got 8 speeds, you can just use the gears to stay in the top end. You can just go up in first gear to red line, and then you can just shift 8 different times and stay right up there at the top end. So if you're trying to keep your rods from bending from too much torque in the mid-range, like so many stock bottom end LS turbo guys are, this transmission will allow you to keep your engine operating at high RPM as you go down the strip, in theory, and keep you out of the mid-range where rods get bent. So there's an advantage. The other advantage is it's really amazing what you can do with this thing. Now here's the disadvantage. You've got to run an aftermarket transmission controller, and they're expensive, and there's only a few options on the marketplace right now. But if you're okay with that and you install that and you have it, the things you can do with it are freaking incredible. First of all, you can do a trans brake right out of the box without actually buying a trans brake. I had to spend many, many hundreds of dollars, over $1,000 to buy a trans brake and have it installed in this transmission. The 8HP70, if you use the aftermarket transmission controller, which you will then have trans brake capability with no additional money spent whatsoever. It's all done through the electronics. You just push a button in the cab, put your accelerator to the floor, the engine revs up to whatever RPM you've set your two-step at, you let off the button, the transmission controller drops you into gear, boom, you take off. I don't know any more details than that on how it works, but it apparently works really, really well from the guys I've seen using it. So huge advantage right there. You have trans brake ability right out of the box. What else is really cool about it? Paddle shifting, if you're into that, if you want paddle shifters, you can absolutely do paddle shifters up and down. You can also do this really cool floor shifter that they make. I forget the name of the company, but they make a floor shifter that operates like a sequential. So like these really fast rally cars that have sequential transmissions, or other motorsport cars with sequentials, where they just rev up and they push forward to downshift, and they pull back to upshift. You go wah, bah, 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 and then you're downshifting, bing, bing, bing. It's kind of like that. So it's just forward and back on a floor shifter, which I think is really cool. I want that. But regardless of whether you use paddle shift or floor shift, you still retain full auto shift functionality. So when you want to just drive it in full auto mode, it's still there available for you. So that's pretty cool. Another really cool thing, and this blew my mind, is you can use a clutch with this transmission. Yeah, it's an automatic and you can use a clutch. What is that even all about? So it turns out you can, if you have a clutch pedal or if you install one, you can put a switch or a potentiometer on the clutch pedal. And when you push the clutch in, the transmission controller will see that and it will disengage the transmission, putting you in neutral. And then you can rev the engine up, drop the clutch, and it'll drop you into gear, and you can take off and do a burnout. You can also use this transmission for drifting, and they are using it for drifting. And they're literally clutch kicking in the middle of a corner to break the rear end loose like a manual transmission car does. They're doing it with this automatic transmission. So when you watch these drift videos, you'll see these guys clutch kicking in the corners, and then you'll see them grabbing the sequential shifter up and down as needed. And it just appears that they're driving a manual transmission, but they're really in an 8-speed auto. I think that's really fascinating and really cool and would be fun to have. So I'm leaning really hard towards the 8HP 70. The cost for it is actually going to be cheaper. This is the other thing that kind of blows my mind. It's actually going to be cheaper than the T56 Magnum. Once you add it all up, it's going to be pretty significantly cheaper, like $1,000 cheaper to do the 8HP. So I'm leaning towards that, and plus I got the local place that has one for $700, and I can just go pick it up literally today. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking on the car. It could either be a 6-speed manual T56 Magnum, or it can be the 8HP 8-speed auto, but I'm really leaning hard towards the 8HP because, guys, I really think this is the transmission of the future for swap projects and for hot rod projects and the kind of stuff that I do and that we do. I have a feeling that this transmission is going to be the most swapped, most used, most developed, most loved transmission of all time for like probably the rest of our life. I don't think there's going to be another transmission come around that can do more for less, or that can do more at all. Like, this seems to be the transmission that can literally do it all. Oh, shift speeds, super fast. Some of you guys know about the DCT, the dual clutch transmissions that they have in the BMWs and other cars, and they're renowned for their shift speed. Well, the 8HP is like, it's like 95% as fast as the DCT, and it's a torque converter automatic, and it can shift basically as fast as a DCT. That's impressive. And if you watch reviews of guys who have driven both cars, DCT and 8HP, they all say the same thing. They say it does basically everything a DCT can do on shift speed, but it's nicer to drive. It just works better. So honestly, I think that's the transmission of the future for me and for so many people who do, projects and swaps and like to race and drag and drift and this kind of stuff. I think over the next few years, you're going to see that transmission absolutely take over. So my point is, I kind of want to be at the forefront of that. I kind of want to get in early on that and be one of the early, maybe you'd call me an early pioneer if I do it now. I certainly won't be the first, but be kind of one of the first wave to get into that, which I like. I just find that kind of fun to be in the beginning stages of new technology, so to speak, or new adoption of an existing technology into a different market. I think that's fun. That's why I put the LS in this car in the first place. Although LS and a 240 is nothing impressive now, you got to keep in mind I started this project like 11 years ago. Back then, LS and a 240 was really cutting edge stuff. So I think it'd be fun to get the chassis back into something that's kind of cutting edge like that. Might renew some interest in the car and might make the car drive a lot better, be more engaging to drive. I want something that's more engaging to drive. So if I have that sequential shift option, that would be cool. If I retain the trans brake feature, that would be cool. So anyway, I think this is all leading me to decide that probably the 8HP is the way to go. You guys tell me in the comments what you think. I haven't bought anything yet, so I can go either way. and I haven't sold the old transmission yet, so I could put that back in, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably not going to do that. So anyway, vote in the comments by just telling me what you think. Is the 8 HP the transmission of the future for everybody, for most of us? Do you like the sound of it? Are you a diehard manual? Do you just want a manual all the time because of that connection to the car? I understand that too. Are you an old school 3-speed, 4-speed guy that you just want to keep it simple and basic stuff like that? Just let me know what your thoughts are. I'm curious. But anyway, I just wanted to update you guys on where I'm at with the car and what's happening and kind of update you on what my thoughts are on it. But anyway, that's what I got for you guys. So I will see you guys on the next one.